Dave, this is a show where Mike Tyson comes in and serves as the special ringside enforcer for the Stone Cold Steve Austin challenge of Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship. It's a pivotal show for the company, the crowning of Steve Austin. We come to get another watermark WrestleMania in terms of them anointing a new guy. And I want to ask you about Mike Tyson, because when we talked about WrestleMania 1, we talked about the role, the transformative role, really, Mr. T played in exposing Hulk Hogan to the masses. It strikes me that there's parallels here with Stone Cold, yet we had the two at each other's throats, as opposed to Hogan and T working together as partners and getting the shine that way. We had we had Austin and Tyson shoving each other in the middle of the ring on Raw in an unforgettable moment in '98. So what was the different dynamic with this and Hogan T, and why did it work so well?
I mean, that thing was so great. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, Steve Austin, I mean, what a performance he put on. And Mike Tyson was very believable, and people thought Mike Tyson was a nut anyway, so they didn't know what to make of him. And he was larger, you know, as large as life as Mr. T was, and he was. Mike Tyson was even bigger. And you know, I mean, that was, you know, that 1998 WrestleMania, that was the beginning of what I call WrestleMania, because 1997 WrestleMania did 237,000 buys in 1997. You know, that's an absolutely horrible number. So WrestleMania was, even though it had that great match with Brett and Austin that people remember, WCW pay-per-views, half the WCW pay-per-views that year beat WrestleMania, and Survivor Series that year beat WrestleMania. So it wasn't like WrestleMania name meant anything. This was the beginning of WrestleMania being something special, and you know, what it is today, where, you know, even with business being flat, WrestleMania is this gigantic day, and this was the show that started that trend. I just, you know, he paid $3.5 million to get the guy, and you know, he hadn't signed him to a contract when he started the angle, and they went to WCW and they go like, look, you know, you match the offer, or, you know, beat the offer. He didn't say match offer. You match the offer, we're going to come to you.
This is Tyson, just for clarity.
Tyson's people. It wasn't Mike, but Tyson's people, who were so trustworthy, you know, that they'd agree to do Vince's angle and WrestleMania and everything like that. And then when they shot the angle, the first thing they do is they go to WCW and go, we didn't sign a contract, and give us a better offer, and we're with you. And Eric just looked at that, and, you know, and Eric did that before with Rodman. I mean, Rodman was supposed to wrestle Goldust at one of the WrestleManias, the one that Piper actually did, I believe. You know, when after the Scott Hall thing, and so Eric gave Rodman a much better financial offer and incredible offer to do the WCW, and Rodman, of course, did very, very well. The Rodman Malone thing was one of the high points in the history of WCW, as far as business goes. So in this case, Eric, you know, that was like $1.5 million base and points. This was, they wanted, you know, more than $3.5 million, you know, guaranteed. And Eric was just like, it's no. Eric turned it down. Well, you know, it'd be an interesting thing what he thinks, because that was what got them back in the game, because they went from their pay-per-views doing 250, you know, 237 at WrestleMania and 250 for Survivor Series, which was a super hot build match and everything like that, to, I believe it was 735, something like that, 730. I mean, Tyson was worth his weight in gold. Even if they didn't make money that night on Tyson, which they did, even if they'd only broken even on Tyson, just his value to making Austin was worth his weight in gold. So it was, I mean, Mike Tyson, I always say Mike Tyson and Mr. T are the two celebrities that, you know, that meant the most. I mean, Donald Trump drew the biggest buy rate, but Donald Trump was only meant something that night. Business didn't go up because of it. Nobody got over because of it. I mean, the idea was, with Trump, was to make Lashley. You know, that was the idea, but that one didn't work. But this, you know, did it make Austin? How it made, you know, Austin made Austin so big. Yeah.
In regards to Shawn Michaels and Degeneration X, what was the original long-term plan for Michaels and the group had HBK not injured his back facing The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble?
I mean, he'd have been kept as a top guy and all that. I mean, Austin would have been the face of the promotion, and and Shawn would have been the top heel, and I think they would have wrestled many times over. And DX would have been feuding with Austin instead of Vince McMahon. I'm sure is what would have happened, and it wouldn't have been as strong, but it still would have been strong.
Now, Dave, what about this emergence? And this happened a lot in 1997, certainly, but this emergence, particularly after this night, of Stone Cold Steve Austin as the anti-hero, as somebody who we cheer because he's rebellious. I remember people in this era, because WWF got really hot, they were getting a lot of publicity, a lot of ink, a lot of people were painting with really broad brushes and trying to basically put their finger on why the WWF was so hot, why Stone Cold was so hot, and I think that was the rather oversimplified reason, is that he's kicking his boss's ass and he's an anti-hero. But there have
that was part, kicking his boss's ass and everything. But he was already before Vince McMahon. I mean, the Tyson thing happened months before the Vince McMahon thing happened,
right? And
he was already there. The promos, the attitude, the guy who just didn't care, and I mean, the right guy at the right time. People wanted, it wasn't a copy of Hulk Hogan. It was something completely different from Hulk Hogan, and he was more charismatic than Bret Hart, and he was more of a kick-ass guy than Shawn Michaels, and he was not so pretty, not so good looking. I mean, in the sense of like a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels, he had that rugged thing going for him, and again, he was a better promo than all of them, and I think that was what it was.
Did Shawn Michaels get cold feet on doing the job, or didn't he throw some kind of fit at the last minute, and at WrestleMania 14, Undertaker had to actually confront him in the locker room and say, you've got to do the right thing here?
Well, Undertaker was taping his fist in the background, and I know some people deny it, but Undertaker did confirm it on Michael Landsberg's show, so it happened. It made no sense because we all knew it was it's one thing if like Shawn was Shawn, and he did that a lot, in that era, as far as throwing fits and not wanting to lose and things like that. So if Shawn was normal, I mean, I would have thought there would be trouble doing the job, because I mean there was trouble. His not wanting to do the job caused the Survivor Series, because they had a very simple, easy solution to Survivor Series, which was. Suggested, Brett agreed to it, and it was Vince. Vince, it's not the Vince when this is the Wednesday before Survivor Series. Vince goes and it's him and Brett had been having their troubles on coming up with a finish, and Brett was just and Brett had creative control in his contract, so it was I'm not going to lose in Montreal, I'm not going to lose in Ottawa, I'll lose in Madison Square Garden, I'll lose in Greensboro where they had TV taping, I'll lose anywhere you want, just get me out of Canada. Just the way this angle is, it wasn't so much he wouldn't lose in his home city, and it's not even Calgary. It's just the way the Canadian Patriot thing. He didn't want to fail as a Canadian Patriot and then go to WCW, where the idea was he was going to be the Canadian superstar. It would have diminished his value in WCW. He was looking out for himself in that way, and whatever his reason, So Vince goes, Vince went and goes, how about you beat Shawn clean in Montreal, and then we do a match. And the next pay-per-view, which is Springfield, Massachusetts, and Shawn beats you. And it was like, oh, no problem. That's fine. Because Shawn had, been ribbing him, and not ribbing him, but just going like, when Brett had told him, this was probably about 6 weeks before the thing, and Brett had already known he was losing the title to Shawn in Montreal. Vince had asked him to do that, and this is before Brett was going to leave the company. Brett was like, okay, he told, I'm proud to lose to you, whatever. And Shawn, goes, and he actually said this 2 different times. I'm sorry, I'm glad that you say that, because if the situation was reversed, I wouldn't be doing the same thing for you, which is really a stupid ass thing to say. And one of the things about the whole Brett Shawn thing that kind of bothered me, when a lot of wrestlers in later years, whether it was Hogan or Jack Briscoe, or even like Bruno Sammartino, who didn't really understand the situation, go, well, he just should have lost. It's like, I promise you, if Terry Funk would have said to Jack Briscoe, a couple weeks before he was going to lose the title, and just gone, Jack, thank you for losing to me, but I will never put you over, and I will never lose to you. I guarantee you, as tough as Jack Briscoe was, he's calling up, whoever, Sam Muchnick, Jim Barnett, and going like, okay, I'm dropping the title, don't worry, but it ain't to him, and it wouldn't be to him. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just, I was just thinking when that happened, I mean, could you imagine some guy saying that to Lou Thez or Bruno Sammartino or any of those prideful champions? Even Flair, I don't believe would have done it. If the guy went to Flair and goes, I'll never put you over, I don't think Flair would have done it. And Flair will put over anybody. But I don't think he would have done it under those circumstances. Race, none of them. So that's why a lot of the knock on Brett for not doing it, you forget about that one thing. By him saying that, it changed the game. But they had the whole deal where they had the agreement, and then Shawn, Vince called up Shawn and goes, okay, Shawn, this is the deal. You lose to him clean, and he'll lose to you clean, and we got no problems. And Shawn's hemming and hawing, and Triple H is on the phone too. And Triple H just goes, he's leaving the company. Under no circumstances, Shawn, should you be losing to some guy leaving the company. And that was your answer. That's why Montreal happened. So here now, but I get all that, right? This one, Shawn's got a broken back. This is his last match for months. It ended up being his last match in the WWF for more than 4 years, but we knew it was his last match for 6 months. We figured back surgery, 6-9 months out. Of course he's going to lose the title. It makes no sense. Why he came in with the idea that he wasn't going to lose the title, I have no idea why he would be like that on that night. It wasn't for a guy who was leaving. It was for a guy who was on the ascent. And what is he going to do, keep the title and while he's out for 9 months? That doesn't work. So, yeah, it happened. It was it's strange, but that's what happened.
Now, Dave, we all know that Steve Austin broke his neck wrestling Owen Hart at SummerSlam 1997. Now, my question is, had Austin not recovered from this serious neck injury or not recovered in time, who would have been the guy? Did they have a plan for somebody else? Had Austin...
I am almost certain it would have been Undertaker.
Mm. Really?
I don't know, because it never was an issue, because by the time they got to where they were planning out the show, or if they would have known ahead of time, I'm guessing that Vince would have kept Brett, and it would have been, they would have finally done that maybe Shawn would have beat Brett, and Brett would have beat Shawn in Montreal, and Shawn would have beat Brett back for the title, or whatever, and gone something like that. But by the time that they really got into WrestleMania planning, it was Austin was going to be able to wrestle. But yeah, so it would if Austin went down, it would have changed history completely. I mean, WCW, I don't know, they so freaking self-destructed in 98 and 99 that it may have ended up the same way, but who's to say? Who's to say that if Austin wouldn't have, if Austin's career was over then, that they never would have gotten hot enough, and we would be watching Nitro every Monday.
Now, Dave, also on this show, Sable takes center stage, and she was, I won't say a flash in the pan, but she was such a hot part of the roster that they even considered, when they unveiled SmackDown in 99, making it an all-female division show because of how hot a star Sable was in the sort of constellation of the WWF. And she powerbombs Luna on this show in the mixed tag and just gets over like crazy. And I'm just interested in your thoughts on where Sable ranks in terms of, of course not being the best in terms of in-ring that they've ever had, but in terms of being the most over among the women they've ever had.
She at that moment was the most over as far as actually, moving ratings. I mean, Chyna was probably the second most over. But Chyna wasn't as hot as Sable at all. No. So she was, it was amazing in 98. I mean, it was 98, 99, well, 98, where I would look at those quarter hours, and every time Chyna and Bill Goldberg were on the screen, I mean, it was 500,000 viewers switching from one show to the other. And it was like, I could sort of get Bill Goldberg, and I got Chyna too. But it was phenomenal, how that happened. So she, she was, as far as a TV ratings draw, she was freaking huge. Now, having said that, I think that the idea of all women SmackDown would have maybe been, for 1 year, might have done okay, and it would have then died. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have SmackDown the way we have it if it had been an all women show. Would have been like, it wouldn't have stood the test of time at all.